We've all been there, right? Those amazing moments of pure joy, and then those really tough periods of suffering. But what if there's a way to make sense of both? Well, today we're diving into the philosophy of blessings and calamities. It really all starts with a question that people have been asking forever. A question I'm sure you've asked yourself at some point. Why do we suffer? Why is there so much pain and hardship in the world?
You know, our lives can feel like they're defined by this huge contrast. On one side, you have the blessings, or nemat, things like good health, happiness, success. But on the other side, you've got the calamities, or musiba, sickness, loss, disasters, all the stuff that can feel so unfair and random.
So, this back and forth creates a pretty fundamental contradiction, doesn't it? How can a world with so much good in it also have so much pain? Let's dig into how one philosophical text tries to square that circle. Our guide for this is a really fascinating 20th century book from the Indian subcontinent. It's called Falsafa-i-Nemat-wa-Musibat, which translates to The Philosophy of Blessings and Calamities, and it was written for the specific purpose of giving a structured answer to this exact problem.
All right, so what is the philosophical answer it offers? Let's start to unpack the framework it builds to help us make sense of all this joy and suffering.
And let me tell you, this isn't just about some vague, feel-good platitudes. If you look at the book's table of contents, you can see it's super systematic. It lays out its arguments very logically, chapter by chapter, to build this really comprehensive case. So the whole philosophy really stands on four core pillars. First, there's the idea of a divine decree, which is called takdir. Second is the concept that there's a real purpose behind human calamity. Third, it talks about the link between our actions and what happens next. And finally, and this is a big one, it acknowledges that our human knowledge is, well, limited.
But here's what makes this book so compelling. It doesn't just state its case and expect you to believe it. It actually tackles skepticism head on. It builds its entire argument by first addressing the hardest questions a doubter could possibly ask.
And this is just a brilliant approach, isn't it? The text doesn't shy away from the uncomfortable stuff. It uses those very doubts as the starting point for its entire explanation. It really shows a deep understanding of the struggle people have with this. For example, it asks point blank the question that troubles so many people. If the Creator is supposed to be merciful, why is the world so full of pain and agony? And then it follows up with another zinger. Why do things like floods, earthquakes, and diseases so often hit innocent people? People who seemingly did nothing to deserve it. All of these questions ultimately lead to an even bigger, more existential one. Is the world just chaos? Is it all just a random series of events with no real meaning or justice behind it? The book's answer to all of this really hinges on one powerful idea. Our own perspective is fundamentally limited. The answer, it suggests, is actually found beyond what we can immediately see and understand. And that brings us to that central concept of takdir, or divine decree. Now, this isn't about fatalism, like we have no choice. It's the philosophical idea that events are part of a much bigger divine plan, a plan that has its own wisdom, which we might not be able to grasp from our human point of view. This all leads to the book's core argument, which is this. What looks and feels like a senseless calamity from our limited human viewpoint might actually be a blessing, a necessary piece of a much larger divine context that we just can't see. Okay, so that's the big idea, but how does this actually help us in real life? The text doesn't just explain the why, it also offers a framework for how to respond when you're actually facing hardship. It lays out a really clear three-part approach. First, patience. This is about enduring difficulty without letting it break your spirit or your faith. Second, introspection. Using that hardship as a chance to look inward, to reflect on your life and your actions. And third, trust. Making the active choice to believe in a greater wisdom, even when things just don't make any sense. When you put all this together, the ultimate goal is to reframe suffering. It stops being this meaningless, awful thing you just have to endure. Instead, it becomes a potential catalyst, a really powerful, even if painful, opportunity for spiritual growth and a much deeper understanding. And so, we're left with this one last thought to chew on. After exploring this whole framework, you have to ask yourself, could it be that the meaning of our suffering is really just a matter of the perspective we choose to take?